So I took my novice vows in India, and I still lived at the temple in Toronto. And then I decided that the main thing I wanted to do was study the scriptures right from the first moment of wanting to be a monk. And in the Tibetan tradition, the best place to do this, one has to learn the Tibetan language, which actually comes from the Sanskrit language. And the Tibetan tradition is none other than the Nalanda tradition. It comes from, you probably know, of Nalanda University in India. And the text that we're going to be looking at today together is from one of the Nalanda scholars, an Indian Pandit named Arya Shantideva. I'll tell you a bit about him in a moment. And I decided I wanted to study the scriptures because I had spent years here in Toronto as a monk, working with the sick and the dying and the bereaved. So I would say that mainly my practice as a monk was giving service to the community and giving service to the religious community, helping organize things. Making a temple run, you all are very experienced at this. I've seen you, running around doing things, making this Poya Day happen. And this was my main task, cleaning people and changing diapers. And so it was a good practice. I feel that one of the monks here, the Bangladeshi monk, I'm sorry, I forget his name, Banti, he told me that he spent some time also doing the same, helping people who were sick and giving counseling. And I feel that Buddhist monks and nuns need to do this more. And also my teacher, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, says we need to do this more, be more physically engaged in helping people who really need help. And so I had the good fortune of being able to do that. And I learned a lot from my patients, because my patients taught me a little bit about patience, practicing patience. So I moved to India at the end of 2001, and I moved to North India, which is where the Tibetan exile government and one of the main Tibetan settlements is in Himachal Pradesh province, in a city called Dharamsala, which is near the Kangra Valley. It's the lower rim of the Himalayas, so it's close to Kashmir, it's close to the Punjab. It's also quite close to Nepal. I think it's on the same latitude as Lumbini, and I'm not sure, but not so far. It doesn't take long to get to Lumbini. So it gets cold around now, but I'm happy there because I'm with my teachers and I'm surrounded by monks, which I haven't had much experience with that. And when I stayed overnight here, and I'm always happiest when I'm surrounded by other monks. I feel at home wherever I go when I'm with monks. And my teachers are very kind. Are very kind. Now I'm learning some Vinaya, but mainly I'm learning Tibetan so that I can study the scriptures. And the study program for a monk in this tradition is at least 14 years, but one can go for almost 20 years sometimes. Not that the study ends at that point, but then one can at that point receive sort of like a PhD in Buddhist philosophy. Some people go into retreat and do a long period of meditation for 3 years or longer. Some people teach, and some people just keep on studying. So for me, I consider myself a full-time student, and because the main thing is I want to learn as much as I can about Buddha Dharma from the sutras, and that's my main task now. So I'm here visiting my family, and particularly my mother, because she's having a difficult time. Her children are all leaving, and she's not sure what to do. And she told me she needs to find meaning in her life. So I can't help her much, but at least I can give her some caring. I think our parents are very important. Sometimes in the scriptures it says that the Buddhas and our parents are both the most powerful fields of merit that we have. We can make extremely good karma and extremely bad karma depending on how we relate to these objects. And so I may not be able to help my parents financially, but the best thing I feel I can do and I must do is work on my mind, and also care to make up for all of the time I didn't care enough. And so we're going to talk about anger, because I had a lot of anger towards everybody, and particularly my family was on the receiving end of my anger. So that's a little bit about me. So the author of this text, the text is called A Guide to One Who is Developing an Awakening Mind. In Sanskrit, it's the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. In Tibetan, it's Jangchu Sempe Chopa Lajupa. It was written by Arya Shantideva, and he was a Nalanda scholar, as I mentioned. And his is a very important story for me. I'd like to share a short version of it, because Shantideva was known, in Tibetan it's called a dob-dob, or you could say he was like a naughty monk. Maybe not a naughty monk, but a stupid monk. This is how the monks at Nalanda saw him. They said that Arya Shantideva used to do only 3 things. He used to sleep, he would eat, and he would go to the bathroom. Because he spent a lot of time in his cell, so they thought he was a lazy monk. So maybe I'm a dob-dob too. So one day they wanted to tease him. They wanted to make fun of him. Maybe some of you know this story. So they invited him to give a big teaching. Maybe that's what's happening today. I've been asked to say something, and I'm not sure what to say. So they asked him to give a teaching. And to make fun of him, they made a very high throne, because they knew that it would be impossible for him to climb the throne. So at this point, nobody knew really who this person was. And when he saw the throne, he looked up, and then in the blink of an eye, he was on the throne, and no one knew how he got on top of the throne, but we know how he got on the throne. He was a very special being. He wasn't just sleeping. He was spending time contemplating and practicing the Dharma, but secretly. He was a secret practitioner. So when he got onto the throne, he said to the other monks who were at this point a bit sorry for treating him that way. And he said to them, would you like a new teaching, one that's never been heard before or taught before, or would you like an old one? And they said, I think some of them still had some doubt, even though he showed a miracle. They said, give us a new teaching. This is the teaching that he gave, this text. And as he was teaching, many monks who were present had realizations, and many of them, I'm sure, were crying because they were very sorry for having mistreated him. Because again, another example, like my hippie friend who was my first teacher, we never know by looking at someone. That's why we have to treat everyone as if they were a Buddha, because we don't know who they are. They could be in disguise, even especially beggars. Sometimes beggars are high beings in disguise, I believe. So as he was teaching, he came to the last chapter. There are 9 chapters in this text. The last chapter is there's 10 chapters actually. During the 9th chapter, which is on wisdom, the middle view, you might have heard of the Majjhimika. It's a particular philosophical view that was first taught by Lord Buddha, but then it was regenerated by Arya Nagarjuna, another Indian pandit. As he was teaching the 9th chapter, Arya Shantideva started to rise up off of his seat into the air, which doesn't happen nowadays. But at that point, at that time, like Lord Buddha, when he showed these signs, it inspired people to practice the Dharma more deeply. And it actually made things happen in their mind and in their heart that they were ready for. Maybe some people couldn't see it, I'm not sure. As he was rising up, some of the other monks, were also rising up. But it's said that when Arya Shantideva was teaching the last chapter on wisdom, as he was rising up, at some point he went up so high into the sky that all they could hear was his voice. And he was gone. So they wanted to find him because they wanted the text. And of course, they wanted him to come back and teach. Eventually, I think after years of searching, they found him and they asked him for the text, and would you please come back and teach us? They wanted him to be the abbot and play a role in the monastery, and they apologized for having been unkind and not recognizing him. And he said, no, I have some other things to do. So he was busy helping beings in other ways. But he said, you can find the scripture in the rafters of my room. and it was written in a shorthand script. So they went back, and that's where this came from. So we've got about half an hour or so to talk about patience. So I'll also tell you that I've received teachings on this particular chapter from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I've also received teachings on the most of this text, not the complete text, from one of my teachers in India, whose name is Geshe Sonam Rinchen, who is a monk from the Kham region of Tibet, which is, they're known for being the warriors of Tibet, so he's a very strong teacher. But he loves, this is his favorite text. I would say it's my favorite text too. And also I received some teachings from my first teacher, the nun that I mentioned, Ane Tenzin Khaosang. And so this isn't by any means a commentary that I'm going to read some of the verses and then just share with you maybe some of the things I can remember that I've heard, and also some things that come to mind, and also I hope there'll be some time for questions. And in our tradition we have a question and answers. I'm not quite sure how it works in your tradition, but if you want to ask some questions, you'll feel free. Also during the course of this you can also ask questions, and I might ask you some questions, if that's okay. Do I have your permission? Yes, I have. She's your representative. Okay, so this is the patience chapter. In Tibetan, patience is sopa. I'm just going to sneak in a few Tibetan words there because of my love for the language. So the verse starts off like this. Whatever wholesome deeds, such as venerating the Buddhas and generosity, that have been amassed over 1,000 eons, will all be destroyed in one moment of anger.